Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. See, the concept of secrecy only exists to those who are unaware of any given information. And secrecy and truth actually doesn't exist. Secrecy is just a code word for lack of knowledge. And knowledge is power, but only to those who lack it. Knowledge is just a tool for those who already have it. Those who lack it can use that knowledge to empower themselves to lift themselves up from any given circumstance. That's why knowledge is power, or why knowledge can be perceived as secret. When it comes to spirituality, most people have taken spirituality, especially in the Western world, as a trend. Spirituality should not be a trend based on the appearance of what you put on or based on the appearance of what you say. Spirituality is a lifestyle, things that you do on a consistent basis. Spirituality should not be a trend, because spirituality is a level of things whereby it does not play with you. This has nothing to do with trying to convince someone to believe in something, or that without the acceptance of one thing, their lives would not be better. That's not what we're talking about here. So it's very important to clarify that before we proceed. But what we are speaking of here is the substance of reality, science of it. What you and I are living in is very fluid, and there's a perfected checks and balance system that the divine creator has put into it, that we are directly linked to, that we can access anytime. Almost like cheat codes in a game, so to say. The problem when people turn spirituality into trend is they themselves render those ability to access that thing, that cheat code of life. Or let's not say cheat code, let's say access code, because cheating sounds like it's not supposed to exist, and somehow someone found it and they're putting it to use as an advantage over others. It's really not a cheat code. It's a birthright that everyone has access to. So we'll call it an access code. That's what spirituality is. And because it's so important and it's an access code to reality that is fluid, someone figured it out and made sure to distract a lot of people from it. Once more, everything we're about to speak of in this specific video and every other video regarding arts and craft, whether one perceives it to be a joke or not, just listen to it and don't try to accept it. In fact, I challenge you to not accept it. I challenge you to question yourself and the words that I'm speaking of here as to how it could be wrong, by taking what's being given to you as to why it's what it is, and you find every way possible to conclude the opposite of its effectiveness. But in the process of that, you would need to have firsthand experience of why it doesn't work by actually doing it. That's the challenge. But hey, I'm not saying do this and that's the end all meet all. I'm saying prove it wrong based on firsthand experience. In other words, I challenge you to try it. But you can only try something if you know the intricate details of it. These are the intricate details, believe it or not, that many people join orders that they get another man's wiener in their mouth or in one of their orifices down there so they could get some degrees. See, you don't have to do that in order for you to get information that people consider to be secret. It can be privileged information, but nonetheless, it's not a secret. And given the fact that spirituality is a naturally occurring attribute, the fact that your heart can beat without you having to think about it, that is spiritual in nature. The fact that you can now induce that heart to beat faster by physically and consciously engaging in physical activity, meaning you are controlling that thing that's naturally automated and causing it to behave differently. That itself is letting you know that there are certain algorithms that link in reality whereby you can access certain things that are beyond the five senses, that are automated, yet you have link and access to it. And those algorithms are perfected. And there's a methodology to it whereby, just as much as you know that if you run right now as fast as you can from point zero, from a point of rest, you know for a fact your heart will beat faster for the purpose of supplying your muscles, your sight, your mind, your sense of smell, everything with energy and life force, because, well, you've induced the need for it to do so. When you stop running, the heart keeps beating nonetheless, but at a fixed pace in order to retain life, because without the flow of blood in your body, well, heat cannot be generated, and most likely the physical body will separate from the soul and the spirit. You comprehend those basics and you can control it. Yet the beating of that heart, you cannot deliberately tell it stop. And when you do somehow manage to tell it to stop, there's a risk to that, because there are fixed laws that we are bound by in this physical world. But there are other things that we can also do in this physical world that will deliberately manipulate those fixed laws. Well, the same thing applies to the spiritual world, because the spiritual world precedes the physical. You don't have to be subjugated by another human being in order for you to know these things. All it takes is for you to sit back and really comprehend it with the intent of actually getting it. No one is trying to convert you into anything. No one is trying to compel you to do anything. But what is being told to you, though, is there are certain perfected mechanisms and checks and balance system in reality that you have access to the moment you decide you're ready for it. And it's really that simple. Spiritual information and its practical use is your birthright. And it's as simple as scientific method of comprehending it and being able to apply one thing or the other based on first-hand knowledge and experience. Not theories, not hypothesis. Hypothesis is how things are concluded. And the people that put things in black and white and passes it on through culture have went through that process of failure and tests, and they've perfected it, and they preserve it and pass it on through either oral tradition or written tradition. And on that note, spirituality is directly embedded into culture. When people try to imitate certain cultures, do certain things, speak certain way, use certain terminologies to greet other people, it's not just because the intent is usurpation. They're not trying to overtake other people's culture. It's because they know there's something more to it than what meets the eyes, and they use it one way or another. The sad part is, over time, it slowly turns into trend and fashion, and the significance and substance of why some people used it or adopted it in the past gets lost in transition slowly. We know better, so we do better. We actually apply it and use spirituality for what it really is. This has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing to do with feel-good talk. This has nothing to do with the intent to make you feel afraid of something you don't know. This has nothing to do with speaking above your head so that you could feel like something smart or cool was said. What this has to do is to show you how the reality that you and I deal with, how it can actually be accessed, and how there are fixed algorithms to it. If you ever heard of people speak about astrology and cosmology of conjunct, square, third house, this and that, see, the flaw to that is people use those things either just for the sake of a conversation or as an excuse that, well, my Mercury is in the fifth house, so blah, blah, blah. You learn those things so that you can head it off and master yourself, not use it as an excuse, or not just using it as a sake of a conversation starter. It's just cool, but where's the functionality of it beyond using it as an excuse of what your flaw or what your positive side is? In the truth, nature does not care about any of that. And once you really begin to get it, you really wouldn't care about it either. That same note of astrology and cosmology that people speak of when they use the sign this, the sign that, blood moon this, blood moon that, all that fanciful stuff people speak of, we're going to make it make more sense. And my goal and my intent is, by the time this video is done, you would have a degree that goes beyond those people who speak about my moon is in the fifth house, my ascendant is this, my north node. See, they're just saying that on a rudimentary level of just, in a fanatical way. There's speculative and there's practical. That stuff that people do is speculation. This that we're about to speak of is the practical aspect of astrology and cosmology. On that note, we'll begin with what we've spoken of previously. In the past, we've spoken about spiritual baths. And the thing about reality and things of spiritual nature is consistency. You will never see results unless you're consistent about it. This is the reason why increments in sequence of 3, 7, or 9 are used. The truth is, if you really need it, you can access it at any given point because energy cannot be created or destroyed. And because of that, it exists at every moment at any given time or space, and you have access to it. But if you're not used to it, it's like cranking up an engine. A cold engine that's been sitting there for about a week or two, you will need a little bit of, it might take a couple of seconds for those sparks and ignition to occur compared to a vehicle you just parked after traveling on a highway for 50 minutes. And then you took the ignition out, you went in and you came back out in about 2 minutes and you turned it back on. The way the engine of that vehicle will respond compared to an engine that's just been sitting. Same car, same make, same model, same engine, everything. But the way those two will respond will be different. Why? Because of the consistent use and the generation of the heat within the engine itself. In this case, the generation of the heat is a repetition in certain things and the importance of repetition of magical work. So when people say, oh, I took a spiritual bath, I've washed myself off of that, like we've spoken of in the past with spiritual bath. The thing with spiritual bath is you are supposed to do it consistently, at least 3 days in a row, not just once. Do it 3 days in a row. Because even when you look at your body, it changes. Your dead skin cells changes. Your hair grows. The consistency of the saliva in your mouth grows. Everything is constantly changing. And you have to hit those cycles of things as it changes to be consistent so that everything carries over in a homogenized manner rather than isolated to just 1 day or 1 hour or certain moments. Cycles are very, very important. And nature itself shows it to us whenever the sun rises and the sun sets. There are fixed algorithms to how things work. And the thing about cosmology and astrology is it's so vast that it cannot be spoken of in one video. And even if the video was to be done and we don't stop talking for a whole year, 24/7, 365, we still wouldn't be able to fully cover it. So we're going to be very specific as possible as to how you can use these things. In the past, we went over the planetary hours and the planetary days. That's just introduction. Here's how you can put it to use. Before we speak of how you can put it to use, it's important to clarify that the religions that a lot of people somehow at some point realize something is wrong with and is used as a tool of war against their minds also has the answer. So long as you know what you're looking at or what you're looking for. John 14:12. Now, I'm not a Christian, and I was not born in a Christian household. But nonetheless, while growing up, we used the Bible, and I still use the Bible. I don't perceive the Bible as a religious book because it is not a religious book. It is a spiritual tool that has a lot to do with the ebbs and flow of those access code of reality. These religious books that people carry about and view it from one spectrum of the mind. If only they knew that they're carrying about cheat sheet of life with them. Some people use it as emotional stability and as emotional security during a time of need, or to remain consistent in the mind from going astray. That if they're not religious, they will be a tyrant. They would destroy stuff. They would terrorize society. So in that sense, these religious books are good because Some people know that they have to keep themselves in check by connecting to a higher power. And that higher power has nothing to do with acceptance of one's God or not, especially regarding what we're speaking of. So when I make reference to any type of book, I wish I can make reference to other religious books. But one, at North America, Bible is the closest thing and that people can relate to. And when you begin to go into other spiritual system, for instance, like if I wish I can go into it, but it would be difficult for people to grasp it because it would take a lot of preliminary information to give it to people, even though the culture and spirituality on earth is one. And because the culture and spirituality on earth is one, whereby if you read one thing in one culture and one spiritual system over there, it inevitably is spoken of in another culture and another spiritual system. So the quickest way to access that same system without too much derivative is the Bible. That's the reason why we keep going back to the Bible. But if you guys don't mind, we can go through it from other angles also. But nonetheless, John 14:2, my Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? That is a New International Version. But the King James Version tells you, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And this mansion has nothing to do with a physical building. Do you know what this mansion makes reference to when it comes to astrology and the function and application of it and preparation of you going into that mansion? It's called Lunar Station, often called Lunar Mansion. The use of English word mansion, though customary, is an overly literal translation of the Latin mantio, which means simply a stopover, a way station, even roadside lodging, but without any grandiose connotation. In other words, the actual use and the intent of this word mansion is the complete opposite of how we use it. When most people hear the word mansion, they think of a grand building, a grand structure, when in truth, it has no element of grandiose involved in it. It's a temporary place of lodging, like a motel or a hotel. In this case, lunar, making reference to the moon. Even if someone is not into astrology or some formal aspect of spirituality when it comes to astrology, because astrology, just to learn about it, to have a conversation, is different from astrology to learn about it, to put it to use. We're talking about it to learn about it, to put it to use. These lunar mansions, aka station being same thing as mansion in this equation, often called lunar mansion, a lunar station, or a lunar house, means there are cycles of the moon, and these cycles are called mansions, aka station, aka house. With each of these lunar cycles, and we're not merely referring to waning moon or waxing moon. Waning moon means the moon is decreasing, and waxing means the moon is increasing. We're not merely referring to that. We're not referring to half a moon. We're not referring to full moon or new moon. These lunar mansions are based on specific cycles. To complete 50-minute videos on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.